Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to click like and subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Your support helps us create more awesome videos for you. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Enjoy the video. Oakhaven. That's what they called our town. Not because of any abundance of oak trees, mind you, but because of the sense of steadfastness it evoked. A place where roots ran deep, where generations of families had lived and died, their histories intertwined with the very fabric of the town. I, Elias, was born and raised in Oakhaven, and I never questioned my place in this quaint tableau, at least not until the nights began to unravel the illusion of our tranquil existence. Even as a child, I was drawn to the shadows, to the whispers that danced on the periphery of perception. I saw things that others didn't, heard voices that spoke only to me. My world was a tapestry woven with threads of reality and fantasy, and I often found it difficult to distinguish between the two. My earliest memories were steeped in the folklore of the town, tales whispered around crackling fireplaces on cold winter nights. Stories of the creature, of the nightly lockdown, of the people who had vanished without a trace. These tales weren't just bedtime stories to scare children. They were cautionary warnings, deeply ingrained in the collective consciousness of Oakhaven. They shaped our lives, dictated our routines, and cast a long, ominous shadow over our childhoods. But the stories I heard as a child were just the beginning. As I grew older, the whispers in the shadows grew louder, more insistent. They spoke of a creature that was constantly changing, evolving, becoming more powerful with each passing night. Sometimes when I was alone in my room, I would see strange symbols scrawled on the walls in what I could only assume was dried blood. They would appear as quickly as they vanished, leaving me to question my sanity. My parents, bless their hearts, tried to shield me from the harsher realities of our town. My father, a stoic man with calloused hands and a kind heart, would often tell me stories of his own childhood, of simpler times before the fear had taken root. My mother, a woman of quiet strength and unwavering faith, would sing me lullabies about meadows bathed in sunlight and birds singing in the trees, a world seemingly untouched by darkness. But even their love couldn't completely erase the fear that permeated our lives. I remember the first time I witnessed the lockdown. I was barely 5 years old, playing hide and seek with my friends in the fading light of dusk. Suddenly, the air grew still. The playful shouts and laughter died down, and an eerie silence descended upon the town. My friends, their faces etched with a fear that mirrored my own, scurried back to their homes, leaving me standing alone in the gathering darkness. That night, I huddled in my bed, the covers pulled tight over my head, listening to the strange sounds that filtered through the walls. The creaking of floorboards, the rattling of windows, the muffled whispers of my parents as they checked the locks and bolted the doors. But tonight, there was something else. A faint scratching sound, like claws on wood, coming from inside the walls. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to go away. As I grew older, the fear became a constant companion, a shadow that followed me wherever I went. It shaped my personality, making me introverted and cautious, always wary of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edges of my perception. I found solace in books, losing myself in worlds where heroes triumphed over evil and where happy endings were guaranteed. But even in the realm of fantasy, the shadow of the creature lingered, a constant reminder of the darkness that awaited me outside the pages of my stories. And the whispers never ceased, following me even into my dreams. My only true friend was Jasper, a mischievous ginger cat with a spirit as wild and free as the wind. We were inseparable, two kindred souls seeking solace in each other's company. I remember the day I found him, a tiny ball of fur abandoned in a cardboard box behind Miller's Hardware. He was barely a few weeks old, his eyes barely open, his meows weak and plaintive. I took him home, and he quickly became my shadow, following me everywhere. his purrs a constant source of comfort. One rainy afternoon, when I was about 7, I wandered into the woods behind our house, seeking refuge from the dreary weather and the suffocating atmosphere of fear that permeated our town. I stumbled upon an old abandoned well, its stone rim covered in moss and lichen. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peered over the edge. The well was deep and dark, the water at the bottom barely visible in the dim light. Suddenly, I lost my footing and tumbled into the abyss. I remember the feeling of falling, the rush of air against my face, the sickening lurch in my stomach as I plunged towards the unknown. Then everything went black. When I awoke, I was lying in my bed, my mother's tear-stained face hovering over me. She told me that Jasper had found me, that he had alerted my parents to my predicament with his frantic meows and insistent scratching at the back door. They had followed him to the well and pulled me to safety. From that day forward, my bond with Jasper deepened. He was more than just a pet. He was my protector, my savior, the one creature in this town who seemed to understand my fears and share my burdens. But even Jasper couldn't protect me from the whispers, which seemed to grow louder after my fall, as if the darkness within the well had seeped into my very being. The night I first encountered the creature, I was 10 years old. A full moon, fat and luminous, hung like a spectral orb in the inky sky, casting long, ominous shadows across my bedroom floor. I had been engrossed in a particularly thrilling adventure comic, the kind with lurid illustrations of monstrous creatures and daring heroes. I knew I should have been asleep, but the story had me in its grip, my imagination alight with visions of brave adventurers and terrifying beasts. Suddenly, a low, guttural hum reverberated through the house, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself. It set my teeth on edge and sent shivers crawling down my spine. My comic book fell from my grasp, forgotten as a primal fear gripped me. Curiosity, or perhaps a morbid fascination, compelled me to creep towards the window and peek through the blinds. The street, usually bustling with activity even at this late hour, was deserted, bathed in an unnatural, silvery light that seemed to distort the familiar shapes of houses and trees. And then I saw it. It wasn't something I could easily describe, not in the way you describe a dog or a cat or even a particularly strange insect. It wasn't human, nor was it any animal I had ever seen or imagined. It was an aberration. Its form was fluid, shifting, defying definition. One moment it resembled a hulking beast with limbs that bent at impossible angles. The next it seemed to melt into the shadows, becoming a mere ripple in the fabric of reality. It moved with a grotesque, jerky gait, as if its body was a puppet controlled by an unseen, malevolent force. An aura of distortion clung to it, making my eyes ache and my stomach churn. The very air around it seemed to shimmer and warp, as if reality itself was struggling to contain its presence. But the most terrifying aspect was its hunger. It radiated an insatiable craving, a primal need that seemed to devour the very air around it, leaving a vacuum of despair in its wake. I watched, transfixed, as it slithered past my window, its presence leaving a trail of unease that clung to the walls and seeped into my bones. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, swallowed by the shadows, leaving behind a silence that was somehow more terrifying than any sound. I lay in bed trembling, the image of the creature seared into my mind, a haunting vision that would forever color my perception of the night. But this was only the first of many encounters. Each night, the creature would return, its form subtly different, its presence more menacing. The whispers in my head grew louder, more insistent, taunting me with cryptic messages and fragmented images of unimaginable horrors. I started seeing things in the periphery of my vision, fleeting glimpses of elongated limbs and glowing eyes that vanished before I could focus on them. The next day, I sought out Old Man Hemlock, the town historian. He was a wizened man, his face a roadmap of wrinkles etched by time and worry, his eyes holding a depth of knowledge that both fascinated and frightened me. He lived in a rambling old house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by stacks of books and dusty artifacts. I told him what I had seen, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement. He listened patiently, his gaze fixed on some distant point in the room, as if seeing something that I couldn't. When I finished, he sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "Ah, Elias," he said, his voice raspy with age, "you've seen the Harbinger, the devourer of souls." He led me to a dusty bookshelf, his fingers tracing the spines of ancient tomes bound in leather and iron. He pulled out a particularly worn volume, its pages brittle with age, its text written in a language I didn't recognize. "This," he said, "is the Chronicle of Oakhaven, a record of our town's history, passed down through generations of Hemlocks. It tells the story of the Harbinger, a creature of immense power and insatiable hunger, banished to our world centuries ago for its transgressions against the natural order." He opened the book, revealing faded illustrations of a creature that resembled the one I had seen, its form shifting and distorted, its eyes burning with malevolence. But even these ancient depictions hinted at the creature's evolving nature. In one illustration, it had wings. In another, it was surrounded by a swarm of smaller, shadowy figures. The text, translated by Old Man Hemlock, spoke of a ritual, a sacrifice that could bind the Harbinger to Oakhaven, preventing it from wreaking havoc upon the world. But the ritual came with a terrible price. Every year, Old Man Hemlock explained, his voice heavy with sorrow, on the eve of the summer solstice, the town must offer a soul to the Harbinger, a willing sacrifice given freely to appease its hunger and maintain the fragile balance that keeps it bound to our town. He closed the book, his expression grim. "It is a terrible burden, Elias, but it is the price we pay for the safety of our world." Old Man Hemlock's words echoed in my mind, a chilling blend of history and folklore. Was the Chronicle of Oakhaven a genuine record of the town's past, or was it merely a collection of myths and legends designed to perpetuate the cycle of fear and control? I left Old Man Hemlock's house that day with a heavy heart, the weight of the town's secret pressing down on me. I understood now why my parents had never spoken of the creature, why they had tried to shield me from the truth. The knowledge was a curse, a burden that I would carry for the rest of my life. But as I delved deeper into the Chronicle of Oakhaven, I discovered another layer of secrecy, a hidden truth that lay buried beneath the town's official history. There were cryptic references to a clandestine group, the Keepers of the Balance, who were entrusted with the responsibility of maintaining the ritual and protecting the town from the Harbinger. The Keepers, according to the Chronicle, were not just guardians of the ritual, they were also manipulators of information, carefully controlling the flow of knowledge within Oakhaven, ensuring that the townsfolk remained ignorant of the true nature of their predicament. They were the architects of the fear, the puppeteers who pulled the strings of the town's collective consciousness. This revelation filled me with a sense of unease. Were my parents part of this secret society? Was their silence, their reluctance to discuss the creature, a deliberate act of deception? Or were they, like the rest of the townsfolk, merely pawns in a game played by forces beyond their comprehension? The oppressive weight of fear that hung over Oakhaven grew heavier with each passing year. The disappearances continued, sporadic at first, then increasing in frequency, a grim reminder of the creature's presence and our vulnerability. Or was it? Doubt gnawed at me, a persistent whisper that questioned the reality of the creature, the validity of the town's fears. Was the Harbinger real? Or was it a collective delusion, a shared hallucination fueled by generations of fear and paranoia? I began to observe the townsfolk more closely, searching for clues, for any sign that they were in on the secret, that they were perpetuating the myth of the creature for some sinister purpose. But their fear seemed genuine. their anxiety palpable. Were they all victims of a mass delusion, or was I the one who was losing touch with reality? My attempts to warn others only served to reinforce my isolation. People avoided me, whispering behind my back, labeling me as a madman, a danger to myself and others. Even my parents, once so supportive, grew distant, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and fear. "Elias," my mother said one day, her voice laced with concern, "you need to stop this. You're making yourself sick with worry." "But Mom," I protested, "don't you see? They're all lying. The creature isn't real. It's all a hoax, a way to control us." My mother shook her head sadly. "Elias, you're not well. You need to rest. You need to let go of these obsessions." Her words stung, but they also fueled my determination. I wouldn't let them silence me. I wouldn't let them convince me that I was crazy. I would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. But as I delved deeper into the mystery of Oak Haven, my grip on reality loosened. The lines between what was real and what was imagined blurred, and I found myself trapped in a labyrinth of paranoia and delusion. Was I truly sane? Or was I, like the townsfolk I sought to warn, a victim of the very fear I sought to expose? The question haunted me, a chilling echo in the chambers of my mind. One sweltering summer night, the air thick with the scent of honeysuckle and impending doom, I found myself facing a terrifying dilemma. Jasper, ever the adventurer, had slipped out unnoticed, his curiosity getting the better of him. I realized his absence with a jolt, the blood draining from my face as the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed the half hour, 11:36 p.m. Panic surged through me, cold and clammy. I couldn't bear the thought of Jasper falling prey to the creature, his playful spirit extinguished in the jaws of that abomination. He was more than just a pet. He was my confidant, my furry companion, the one creature in this town who seemed immune to the pervasive fear that hung over us all. I knew it was reckless, foolhardy to even consider venturing out at this hour, but I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Driven by a desperate surge of protectiveness, I flung open the door and sprinted into the night, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The street, usually alive with the soft glow of porch lights and the murmur of late-night conversations, was eerily silent, bathed in the pale glow of the moon. The houses loomed like shadowy sentinels, their windows dark and lifeless. I spotted Jasper a short distance away, slinking along the sidewalk, his ginger fur gleaming in the moonlight. He was oblivious to the danger lurking in the shadows, his attention focused on a fat moth fluttering erratically around a street lamp. "Jasper," I hissed, my voice a desperate whisper, barely audible above the pounding of my own heart. He glanced back, his emerald eyes gleaming in the darkness, but he didn't come. He was too engrossed in the hunt. As I reached for him, a wave of dizziness washed over me. The air grew heavy, oppressive, charged with an unseen energy that made it difficult to breathe. I felt a presence, vast and malevolent, closing in, a suffocating weight that pressed down on me from all sides. Jasper's fur bristled, and he let out a low growl. His playful demeanor vanished, replaced by a primal fear that mirrored my own. I turned, and there it was, the creature. But it was unlike anything I had seen before. Larger, somehow. Its form, always shifting and distorted, now seemed to writhe with a sickening energy as if barely contained within its own skin. Its eyes, once malevolent yellow orbs, now pulsed with an inner light, casting dancing shadows across the distorted landscape of its face. And from its back, I could see the beginnings of what looked like leathery wings, sprouting like grotesque tumors. It towered over me, its flesh a putrid green, stretched taut over a skeletal frame that seemed to defy the laws of anatomy. Long, bony fingers tipped with razor-sharp claws scraped against the pavement, leaving trails of sparks in their wake. Its head, a grotesque parody of a human skull, lolled at an unnatural angle, and its eyes burned into me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. A gaping maw filled with needle-sharp teeth, opened in a silent snarl, and a stench of decay and rot filled the air, making me gag. The creature lunged, its movements swift and predatory, defying its ungainly appearance. I stumbled back, my voice caught in my throat, paralyzed by fear. Then, Jasper, in a flash of feline courage, leaped at the creature, hissing and spitting, his claws extended. The distraction was all I needed. I scrambled to my feet and fled, adrenaline coursing through my veins, the creature's enraged roar echoing behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't stop running until I reached the sanctuary of my home, slamming the door shut and bolting it behind me, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I collapsed on the floor, gasping for breath, my body trembling with adrenaline. Jasper, thankfully unscathed, rubbed against my legs, purring reassuringly, as if to say, "See, I told you I could handle it." We had survived the night, but the encounter left an indelible mark on my soul. A chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the veil of our seemingly peaceful existence. But as the adrenaline faded and the shock wore off, doubt crept in. Had I really seen the creature? Or was it a hallucination, a figment of my overactive imagination? The line between reality and delusion blurred, and I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew. The next morning, I packed a bag, my resolve solidified. I couldn't stay in Oak Haven any longer. The incident with Jasper had been a wake-up call, a stark realization that the creature's threat was not confined to the shadows, that it could reach out and touch those I cared about. I had to escape the nightly terror, the suffocating fear that clung to me like a second skin. But more importantly, I had to escape the creeping madness that threatened to consume me, fueled by the creature's growing power and the whispers that echoed in my mind. I left a note for my parents, a simple explanation of my departure, a farewell tinged with both love and resentment. I couldn't tell them the truth, not about the creature's evolution, not about the whispers. They wouldn't understand. They would think I was truly mad. And then with a heavy heart and a newfound determination, I slipped out of the house before the sun had even begun to rise. I didn't look back. The Greyhound bus rumbled through the pre-dawn darkness, carrying me away from Oak Haven and towards an uncertain future. As the miles stretched out behind me, I felt a sense of liberation, a shedding of the fear that had weighed me down for so long. Or was it? Was I truly escaping the nightmare, or was I simply carrying it with me, a festering wound in my psyche that would never heal? The city, with its constant noise and activity, offered a temporary respite from the paranoia that had consumed me in Oak Haven. But the respite was short-lived. The creature followed me. Or did it? At first, I thought I had escaped it. The whispers faded, the strange symbols stopped appearing on my walls. But then, slowly, subtly, the signs began to reappear. A fleeting glimpse of a shadowy figure in a crowded street, a sudden chill in a warm room, a sense of being watched followed. The whispers returned, fainter at first, then growing stronger, weaving their way into my thoughts, my dreams. And then there were the crows. They seemed to be everywhere, perched on rooftops, circling overhead, their harsh caws echoing through the concrete canyons. Their eyes, black and beady, followed me wherever I went. I knew somehow that they were connected to the creature, extensions of its will, its senses. Was it real, this monstrous aberration that haunted my dreams and stalked my waking hours? Or was it a manifestation of my own fractured psyche, a phantom born of fear and isolation? I couldn't be sure. The city itself seemed to conspire against me, its shadows whispering secrets, its alleyways teeming with unseen dangers. Every face I encountered seemed to hold a hidden agenda. Every conversation a veiled threat. I tried to convince myself that I was just being paranoid, that the creature was a figment of my imagination. But the evidence was mounting against me. The scratching at my window, the shattered glass, the chilling silence that descended upon the city at 11:38 p.m., the same time the lockdown used to begin in Oak Haven. Was I losing my mind? Or was the world truly as dark and terrifying as I perceived it to be? The line between reality and delusion blurred, and I found myself trapped in a terrifying spiral of paranoia and fear. And then one night, as I stood on the precipice of madness, the truth was revealed. The creature was real, but it wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't a monster from another dimension, or a demon summoned from the depths of hell. It was a product of human experimentation, a genetically engineered abomination created by a secret government agency. And the keepers of the balance were not just guardians of the ritual. They were also agents of this agency, tasked with containing the creature and exploiting its power for their own nefarious purposes. But they had underestimated it. They had failed to anticipate its capacity for growth, for evolution. The realization hit me like a thunderbolt, shattering the last vestiges of my sanity. The world I thought I knew was a lie, a carefully constructed illusion designed to conceal a terrifying truth. And I, Elias, the boy from Oakhaven, was the only one who knew the truth. But what could I do? How could I possibly fight against a force so powerful, so insidious? The answer, as it turned out, came from within. As I stood on the brink of despair, a voice whispered in my ear, a voice that was both familiar and alien. It was the voice of the Harbinger, the devourer of souls. "Elias," it whispered, its voice a chilling caress that seemed to slither into my mind. "You are not alone. I am with you, always." And in that moment I understood. The Harbinger was not my enemy, it was my ally. Or was it? Was I truly hearing the creature's voice? Or was it just another hallucination, another manifestation of my own fractured mind? I couldn't be sure. But the whispers, once terrifying, now held a strange allure, a promise of power, of knowledge. But one thing was certain. I was no longer alone in my fight against the darkness. Whether the Harbinger was real or imagined, its presence gave me strength, a renewed sense of purpose. Together, we would expose the truth, break the Keeper's control, and free the world from the shadows that had enslaved it for so long. Or would we? Was I truly fighting for the greater good, or was I simply a pawn in a larger game, manipulated by forces beyond my comprehension? The doubt lingered, a persistent whisper that threatened to undermine my resolve. But I pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. I had to find a way to stop the creature, to protect the innocent, to save the world from the darkness that threatened to consume it. But how? The answer, as it turned out, came from an unexpected source. One afternoon, as I was browsing the shelves of the bookstore where I worked, I stumbled upon a dusty old volume tucked away in a forgotten corner. The book, bound in leather and embossed with strange symbols, was titled The Book of Shadows. Intrigued, I opened it, and my heart skipped a beat as I recognized the language. It was the same language used in the Chronicle of Oakhaven. The Book of Shadows, as I soon discovered, was a grimoire, a collection of spells and rituals compiled by ancient practitioners of the dark arts. And within its pages, I found a ritual, a counterspell, that could potentially banish the Harbinger back to the dimension from whence it came. But the ritual was complex and dangerous, requiring ingredients that were both rare and forbidden. And even if I could gather the necessary components, there was no guarantee of success. The Book of Shadows warned of dire consequences should the ritual be performed incorrectly, consequences that could unleash even greater horrors upon the world. Despite the risks, I felt a surge of hope. This was it. This was my chance to redeem myself, to save the world from the creature I had unwittingly unleashed. I spent the next few weeks gathering the necessary ingredients, scouring occult shops and libraries, delving into the darkest corners of the internet. The quest was fraught with danger, leading me into contact with shadowy figures and clandestine organizations, each with their own agendas and motivations. But I persevered, driven by a sense of purpose and a desperate hope for redemption. And all the while, the whispers grew stronger, guiding me, urging me onward. Finally, on the eve of the summer solstice, I stood in a secluded clearing in the woods, surrounded by the tools of my trade. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence broken only by the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves. I took a deep breath, steeling my nerves, and began the ritual. The incantation flowed from my lips, ancient words imbued with power and purpose. The air crackled with energy. The ground beneath my feet vibrated with unseen forces. The shadows around me danced and writhed, taking on monstrous shapes that threatened to overwhelm me. But I held firm, my voice growing stronger, my resolve unwavering. I would not be deterred. I would not fail. And then, as the final words of the incantation echoed through the clearing, a blinding light erupted from the center of the circle, engulfing me in its brilliance. I shielded my eyes, my body trembling with the intensity of the energy that surged through me. When the light subsided, I looked around, my heart pounding with anticipation. The clearing was empty. Had it worked? Was the creature gone? Or had I merely unleashed something far worse? A wave of dizziness washed over me, and I collapsed to the ground, my mind reeling, my senses overwhelmed. As darkness closed in, I heard a voice, a chilling whisper that seemed to emanate from the very depths of my soul. "Elias," it whispered, its voice no longer a caress, but a triumphant roar, "you have served your purpose." And then I knew. I had been betrayed. The Harbinger, the devourer of souls, had used me. It had manipulated me, tricked me into performing the ritual, not to banish it, but to break the last of its bonds to this world, to unleash its full potential. And now, it was free. Free to roam the earth, to feed on the souls of the innocent, to unleash its reign of terror upon an unsuspecting world. And I, Elias, the boy from Oakhaven, was responsible. The last thing I saw before darkness consumed me completely was the creature's grotesque form looming over me, its wings fully formed, its eyes burning with malevolent glee, its jaws agape, ready to devour my soul. The nightmare had begun.